In the midst of a busy airport terminal filled with the hum of rolling suitcases and distant announcements, an act of sheer cruelty shattered the routine. Without warning, Karen Thompson, a middle-aged woman known for her haughty demeanor, lunged forward from behind the check-in counter. Her eyes, cold and unyielding, fixed on Marcus Williams, a black pilot calmly waiting for his flight. In a burst of unchecked anger, Karen raised her fist and struck Marcus across the face. The impact was so sudden and brutal that, for a moment, time itself seemed to freeze. Gasps and murmurs erupted among nearby passengers as cameras began capturing every detail. Marcus's expression, a mix of shock and hurt, spoke volumes even before he could react. The crowd, once engaged in quiet conversations and focused on their travel routines, now fell silent in disbelief. Karen, her face flushed with a mix of anger and self-righteousness, barked, "You do not belong here," as if her words could justify her violent act. But in that charged moment, a shift occurred, a ripple of fate that would soon upend everything Karen thought she knew. As the echoes of her aggression faded, a single phone call cut through the murmur of the stunned crowd. The call was deliberate and calm, its tone carrying an authority that no one expected. In those few seconds, questions began to form in every mind. Who was on the other end of that call? How could one voice possibly undo the damage of a single punch? The energy in the terminal changed from shock to suspense, as if the universe were about to deliver a swift, unexpected retribution. Unbeknownst to Karen, Marcus Williams was far more than a routine pilot. His quiet composure and dignified manner hid a secret that would soon strike back with overwhelming force. In that electrifying moment, as the sound of the phone call reverberated through the terminal, the seeds of karmic justice were sown. The stage was set for a dramatic reversal, a turning point that would expose hidden truths and force accountability on those who believed themselves untouchable. Every eye in the terminal was fixed on Karen as whispers turned to shouts of, "What now?" and "Karma's coming." The incident was no longer just about a racist punch. It had evolved into a catalyst for change. The promise of retribution hung heavily in the air, leaving everyone to wonder. How would the tables turn when the truth about Marcus Williams was finally revealed? Before we go any further, subscribe to the channel and comment below where you are watching from. For our returning subscribers, thank you so much for your unwavering support. It truly means a lot to our community. Central City International Airport was a bustling nexus of modern travel and diverse humanity. Gleaming terminal walls, digital flight boards, and the steady flow of people created an atmosphere that celebrated both efficiency and multicultural vibrancy. Within this dynamic setting, every traveler had a story, and every face was part of the city's mosaic of cultures. At the center of today's controversy was Karen Thompson, a woman in her early 40s with a meticulously styled appearance. Known in her circle for her self-assured air and strict adherence to her own set of unwritten rules, Karen worked at a local customer service firm and prided herself on maintaining what she believed were high standards. With her designer blazer and perfectly coiffed hair, she carried herself as if she were an arbiter of taste and propriety. However, beneath that polished exterior lay deep-seated prejudices that had, over time, hardened into a narrow worldview. Opposite her was Marcus Williams, a black male pilot in his mid-30s, whose calm and respectful demeanor belied the intensity of his profession. Marcus was known not only for his skill as a pilot, but also for his unshakable integrity and quiet confidence. Dressed in a tailored uniform that spoke of both professionalism and pride, Marcus had earned the admiration of colleagues and passengers alike. His warm, thoughtful eyes and measured words had always conveyed a sense of dignity, even in the face of adversity. Today, he was simply waiting for his flight, unaware that his routine moment of peace would soon become the center of a storm. The scene unfolded in the bustling main terminal of Central City International Airport. The area near the check-in counters was alive with the energy of departing travelers. Families embraced one another, business professionals scrolled through their phones, and the constant announcements over the intercom blended into a steady background hum. This vibrant setting, which symbolized modern connectivity and progress, was about to become the stage for a clash of values, one where personal bias would collide with quiet dignity. As the incident began, onlookers quickly took notice. Passengers from all walks of life, from college students to seasoned travelers, exchanged looks of shock and dismay. The contrast between Karen's aggressive, prejudiced action and Marcus's composed reaction was striking, a visual reminder that even in an environment as progressive as this, remnants of old hatred could still rear their ugly head. Unbeknownst to many in the terminal, this moment was not merely an isolated act of violence. It was a spark that would ignite a movement, compelling those who believe in justice to rise up and demand accountability. The energy in the air was palpable, and as murmurs of outrage began to swell, the stage was set for a dramatic reversal, a turning point that would force a reckoning with prejudice and redefine what it meant to serve and protect in this modern age. In the immediate aftermath of the punch, chaos erupted throughout the terminal. Karen Thompson, still reeling from her own misguided sense of authority, attempted to justify her actions to anyone who would listen. "I was just enforcing our standards," she insisted loudly, her voice carrying a note of arrogance that only deepened the crowd's indignation. Meanwhile, Marcus Williams stood rooted to the spot, his face a mixture of shock and hurt, yet his posture remained dignified, an embodiment of quiet strength in the face of blatant aggression. Witnesses began to speak out. Several passengers, their eyes wide with disbelief, recorded the incident on their smartphones. One young woman, standing near the boarding gate, later recalled, "He just hit him for no reason. I could not believe what I was seeing." Her words, captured on video, spread quickly online, fueling a growing public outcry that echoed with calls for justice and fairness. Within minutes, the bistro of voices turned to whispers of a pattern. Rumors spread that Karen Thompson had a history of treating customers differently based on their appearance, though many had never dared speak of it openly until now. Internal records from her employer, once hidden from view, were rumored to contain similar incidents, and the idea that her actions were not isolated but part of a deeper, systemic bias began to take hold among the public. Back in the terminal, a calm yet determined Marcus tried to explain his side of the story when approached by a concerned bystander. "I was simply waiting for my flight, minding my own business," he said softly. His words, measured and respectful, only highlighted the absurdity of the aggression thrown at him. The contrast between his peaceful demeanor and Karen's outburst was stark, and every shared video and whispered conversation added weight to the growing chorus of disapproval. The management of Central City International Airport quickly took notice of the incident. Security personnel were dispatched to review the footage from the terminal cameras, and an internal investigation was promptly initiated. The preliminary findings, gathered from digital logs and eyewitness accounts, painted a damning picture. Karen Thompson's actions were not only unprovoked, but consistent with earlier patterns of discriminatory behavior. The investigation revealed that previous complaints had been raised against her, though they had been quietly dismissed by her supervisors. As the internal review gathered momentum, the incident began to take on a larger significance. Community leaders and local civil rights activists rallied, calling for a complete overhaul of how customer service was delivered, especially in spaces that claim to be inclusive. "This is a wake-up call," one activist declared to a local news channel. "When someone in a position of authority behaves like this, it reflects on all of us. We must stand together to ensure that every person is treated with the respect they deserve." Inside the terminal, the atmosphere was charged with tension and the promise of retribution. The incident, initially a single act of violence, had morphed into a symbol of systemic injustice, a rallying point for those demanding that the values of fairness and equality prevail. Every new video clip shared online and every testimony given by a witness reinforced the message that discrimination had no place in a modern, diverse society. The stage was now set for the inevitable escalation, as public pressure and internal scrutiny converged to demand accountability and reform. In the days following the incident, the fallout was swift and unyielding. Social media platforms were inundated with outrage. Videos of the assault, captured from multiple angles by shocked passengers, were viewed millions of times. Hashtags such as hashtag Justice for Marcus and hashtag No More Karen trended nationwide, and public sentiment became a fierce call for accountability. Community meetings sprang up, with citizens demanding that the airline and the authorities take immediate action against discriminatory practices. Within Central City International Airport, the management was under intense scrutiny. An emergency internal investigation was launched, led by Senior Manager Anthony Reyes, a figure known for his uncompromising commitment to fairness. Reyes convened an urgent meeting with his top staff to review digital evidence, witness testimonies, and security camera footage. "We cannot allow such behavior to tarnish our reputation," he declared, his voice resonating with both disappointment and determination. His words struck a chord with younger employees who had long been frustrated by what they saw as outdated and biased practices. Simultaneously, local news outlets began airing exclusive interviews with passengers and bystanders who had witnessed the incident. A particularly powerful clip, in which a young professional tearfully recounted, "I cannot believe someone would do that to an innocent man," was broadcast repeatedly, adding fuel to the fire of public anger. The incident was no longer confined to the terminal. It had ignited a citywide debate about racism in customer service and the abuse of authority by those who were meant to protect. Internal documents soon surfaced that revealed Karen Thompson had been the subject of previous complaints for similar behavior, though her superiors had repeatedly dismissed them. These records, once hidden away, were now making headlines. Employees began sharing their own stories of witnessing discriminatory behavior, and the atmosphere within the company shifted from one of reluctant acceptance to active protest. "We deserve to work in an environment where everyone is treated fairly," one employee stated during a confidential meeting, her voice trembling with determination. The pressure mounted not only within the bistro, but also in boardrooms and management offices. Community leaders and civil rights groups organized public demonstrations outside the airport, holding banners that read, "Respect every passenger," and "Stop discrimination now." Protesters gathered in large numbers, chanting and calling for justice. The visual of a diverse crowd, united in anger and hope, sent a clear message. No one would tolerate discriminatory behavior any longer. At the same time, the internal affairs team, bolstered by digital logs and security footage, compiled a comprehensive report detailing a pattern of misconduct by Karen Thompson. The report was shared with senior management and quickly became the focal point of heated discussions. "This is not an isolated incident," one senior manager remarked. "It is a reflection of a culture that has long been allowed to persist." The revelations intensified the public outcry, and the pressure on the airline's leadership became nearly unbearable. In a high-profile press conference held at the airport, senior manager Anthony Reyes addressed the mounting crisis. Standing before a throng of reporters and community representatives, he vowed that the airline would take decisive action. "We are committed to ensuring that every customer is treated with dignity," Reyes declared. "The evidence before us leaves no room for doubt that discriminatory practices have no place in our service. We will be taking immediate steps to reform our policies and hold those responsible accountable." His announcement was met with thunderous applause and served as a turning point for the institution. As days turned into a week, the internal and external pressures converged, setting the stage for a dramatic resolution. The public's demands for accountability, the detailed evidence gathered by the internal affairs team, and the growing chorus of voices within the airline all pointed to one inevitable conclusion. The entrenched culture of discrimination had to be dismantled. The rising tension was palpable, and every individual involved sensed that the moment of truth was imminent, a moment when the power structure would be overthrown by the relentless force of justice. The decisive moment came on a brisk afternoon during an emergency board meeting held in a grand conference room at the airline's headquarters. The room was filled with senior managers, legal advisors, community representatives, and members of the media, all gathered to witness the final outcome of the internal investigation. With a calm yet authoritative presence, Senior Manager Carlo Ortiz took the podium. After an exhaustive review of all evidence, digital logs, security footage, and numerous eyewitness testimonies, it is clear that flight attendant Karen Thompson's actions were driven solely by personal bias. Ortiz began, her voice unwavering and filled with resolve. Her refusal to serve Mr. Darius Lewis was not only unjustified, it was a blatant act of discrimination that has no place in our service. A heavy silence fell over the room as her words sank in. Ortiz continued, "Effective immediately, Karen Thompson is suspended from duty pending a full disciplinary review. This decision is a clear statement that no one, regardless of their position, is above accountability." The announcement sent shockwaves throughout the room. Karen's confident, haughty expression gave way to one of disbelief and regret as she realized that the evidence against her was overwhelming. At that precise moment, Darius Lewis, the man who had been at the center of the incident, stood up. His eyes, still reflecting the shock of the earlier assault, now shone with quiet determination. In a firm, clear voice, he addressed the assembly. "I have always believed that respect is a right, not a privilege. Today, I stand not as a victim, but as a testament to the power of truth. Let this moment mark the beginning of a future where no one is allowed to be mistreated because of who they are." His words resonated deeply with everyone in the room, and a wave of applause and murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience. Inspector David Ramirez then stepped forward to present the final dossier, a comprehensive collection of all evidence gathered during the investigation. The dossier included internal memos documenting past complaints, security footage that clearly showed the incident, and testimonials from numerous witnesses. As Ramirez laid out the evidence, it became undeniable that Karen Thompson's actions were part of a long-standing pattern of discriminatory behavior. The Internal Affairs Panel, now unanimous in its decision, confirmed that the incident was not an isolated lapse, but a systemic issue that demanded immediate reform. The turning point was complete. The power dynamics in the room shifted irrevocably as the combined weight of public outcry, internal accountability, and undeniable evidence forced a dramatic reversal. Karen Thompson, whose earlier arrogance had once seemed unassailable, now stood exposed as an agent of prejudice. The decision to suspend her was met with resounding applause, a clear declaration that justice would prevail and that no one was above the law. For Darius Lewis, and for every person who had ever suffered under discrimination, this moment was a long-awaited vindication. The board's decisive action signaled the beginning of a new era, a future in which respect and accountability would be the cornerstones of service. The shock on Karen Thompson's face, captured by cameras in the room, became a stark reminder that karma had indeed hit hard, and that every act of injustice would eventually be met with its due consequence. In the weeks that followed the dramatic decision, the entire community and the airline underwent a profound transformation. News of Karen Thompson's suspension and the comprehensive internal investigation spread rapidly. Local media lauded the decision as a watershed moment in the fight against discrimination in customer service, and social media erupted with messages of support for Darius Lewis and calls for broader reform. Darius, whose quiet dignity had carried him through the ordeal, emerged as a beacon of resilience. He participated in community forums and spoke at public events about the importance of standing up for one's rights and demanding accountability from those in power. His gentle strength and unwavering commitment to fairness inspired many, and his story became a rallying cry for change throughout the city. At the same time, Senior Manager Carlo Ortiz and Lieutenant Marcus Daniels spearheaded sweeping reforms within the airline. New training programs on cultural sensitivity, ethical conduct, and unbiased service were implemented for all employees. Policies were overhauled to ensure that any form of discrimination would be met with immediate, decisive action. Regular evaluations and transparent oversight measures were introduced to rebuild trust with the public. Ortiz made it clear that the company's commitment to fairness was not just lip service, but a core value that would guide every decision henceforth. The internal investigation into Karen Thompson's behavior served as a catalyst for further change. Her case was widely discussed in industry forums and local news, and it sparked a broader conversation about the need for systemic reform in customer service industries. The evidence that had once seemed buried in internal records now prompted other companies to review their own practices, creating a ripple effect that reached far beyond the walls of the airline. Public sentiment was equally powerful. Town hall meetings, protests, and community gatherings were organized, where citizens demanded that businesses and institutions uphold the principles of respect and equality. Banners bearing slogans such as "Every Customer Matters" and "No to Racism" filled the streets. Local politicians and civil rights leaders joined forces, promising to support initiatives aimed at eradicating discriminatory practices once and for all. One final public gathering was held in the plaza outside City Hall. As the evening light bathed the area in a warm glow, community members, airline staff, and local leaders gathered to celebrate the progress that had been made. Lieutenant Daniels addressed the crowd with a heartfelt message. "Today, we have taken a stand for justice. Let this moment remind us that every individual is entitled to respect and that our collective voice can bring about lasting change." His words were met with enthusiastic applause, and the atmosphere was one of unity, hope, and the promise of a brighter future. As Central City slowly returned to its daily rhythm, the legacy of that fateful day endured. The painful incident had ignited a movement that promised lasting reform in how customers were treated in even the most elite environments. Darius Lewis's resilience, combined with the unwavering determination of community leaders and reform-minded executives, ensured that no act of prejudice would go unchallenged. The transformation was not immediate, but the seeds of change had been sown deeply, promising a future where justice, respect, and equality would be the norm. In the end, the story of that day became a powerful testament to the idea that when injustice is confronted with courage and collective resolve, even the most deeply ingrained biases can be overcome. Central City and the airline emerged as symbols of renewal, a reminder that karma, when allowed to take its course, always finds a way to hit hard and set things right.